Almost a year ago, I did a review for a multiplayer roguelike called Sworn that was having a beta test that I really enjoyed. Recently, the game released in early access, so this is going to be a follow-up to that video. If you haven't watched it, it will be linked down below. The previous video covered the general idea of the game, so this one will be more focused on the changes since then, as well as what's new. For the basic idea of the game, you have a 1 to 4 player roguelike. In a run, you'll get bonuses and upgrades as well as currencies like gold that you can spend in runs and several other currencies you can spend outside of runs for permanent power increases. Currency is actually what I'm going to talk about first, as it's gone through several different iterations, as well as there having been several more currencies added. As it stands right now, there are 5 currencies that can be spent outside of runs for permanent unlock, and what they do have been switched around from the beta test. In the lobby, called Camarthen Tower, but I'm going to keep calling it the lobby, you can spend crystal shards at this big purple orb called the Source. This will be your main progression system in the game and is largely unchanged. You will start with only the health tree unlocked, and whenever you beat a boss for the first time, you will unlock another tree. Fairy Embers and Grail Water both remain from the beta test, however what they do has changed. Fairy Embers are used to purchase the unlocks for each class, such as the new weapons and new spells. You now unlock these spells and weapons by clearing rooms on that class, and are no longer able to buy them outright. This doesn't change much, as the progression is very quick, and honestly, you won't have the currency to purchase them right away anyway. Grail Water is now used to buy the weapon progression trees. This is the currency that is by far the scarcest, as you only get Grail Water when beating a chapter boss, but I've already gotten enough to completely upgrade a few weapons, so it's still not too bad. Moonstones are used to unlock a few things around the lobby, like a currency exchange, a compendium to track the upgrades you've seen in your runs, and a dice shop. But they also unlock a few things that can be used in runs, such as ultimate blessings, companion blessings, access to fey rifts that bring you to another level, and more. Threads are only used for cosmetic unlocks and don't affect power at all. Currently in early access, we have 3 chapters and then a final gauntlet room into the last boss. For the 2 new chapters, each will present you with 1 of 2 mini-bosses, as well as 1 in-boss. After the final gauntlet room, you'll face the final boss, King Arthur. The enemies in the new chapters are pretty cool, with my favorite being the enemies from Chapter 3. They can be punishing, but don't really feel unfair, while sometimes I find Chapter 2 to be frustrating, but I think that's mostly due to the level design, as Chapter 2 has slow areas as its gimmick. The chapter mini-boss fights have been rewarding to learn, and generally I do find them fair, but some are certainly easier than others. So with them being random which one you'll get, there's a bit of that roguelike RNG element added in there. I won't spoil the final boss at all, but I think they really cooked for it. It was super fun to do, very, very cool visually, and just listen to the soundtrack. There are now 5 difficulties if you include the base difficulty, with new difficulties unlocking when you beat Arthur on the highest you have access to. Very similar to a lot of other systems like boss cells and dead cells and such. With higher difficulties, enemies have more health and damage and you get more rewards, but there's also a new added mechanic of corruptions. Corruptions are negative effects that are active for the duration of a room. These corruptions seem to range from increasing enemy health and damage, to locking you out of some of your upgrades for a room, increasing your dash cooldown timer, adding on-death effects to enemies, environmental hazards, and blocking your revives. Frankly, they can be quite punishing, but you'll often have a choice of which corruption you end up with. You can pick the one that's the least punishing to you. But I can see this being extremely challenging on the higher tiers where you can have up to 4 active per room, and worryingly a little anti-fun, as taking away powers that the players choose, even momentarily, can feel quite bad and break a build for a moment. Pointing out a few of my favorite things that have either been added or changed since the beta, I wanted to start with the ultimate blessings. These are sick, they're flashy, they're strong, and they give iframes for the entire duration. You charge them up with light and heavy attacks, and can use as many as you can generate per room with no limit. Next up is reroll dice. You can get some of these from the upgrade trees, as well as purchase some additional ones in the lobby. These allow you to reroll anytime you're making an upgrade choice in a run. You can reroll which 2 choices of lord you get, or once you've chosen a lord, you can reroll which of the 3 options you're presented with. These dice also work on the in-run upgrade choices for your weapon and spells, and are super helpful in putting together the build you want, while still relying on roguelike RNG of making the best out of what you end up with. Additionally, in the beta test, I found that the slower characters and heavier hitting weapons were nowhere near as good as the faster weapons that could stack up statuses very quickly. However, in the early access release, I found these characters to be quite a bit better and have had some of my better runs on the slower and harder hitting weapons. As for some stuff that I'd like to see change, first up is on the multiplayer side. The biggest draw for this game is that it's a multiplayer roguelike, but as I don't know anyone else who has this game right now, I haven't been able to test the multiplayer at all since the beta. The devs have said that they're looking into putting a lobby browser, but currently there's no timeline on that. I would like to see them add an endless mode, personally. One of the best things about roguelikes to me is getting an insane run where you become so incredibly strong and busted. And while I've had some very, very good runs where I've felt powerful, I think an endless mode would be really enjoyable, particularly given that the game is currently a little light on in-game content. I think that every room should have two choices for where to go next. Too often in a run, there's only one door to the next area, and it has a reward I don't want or isn't really useful to me, which is kind of fine in the early game as all the resources are useful, but once you start to max things out and don't need them anymore, it starts to feel bad, and I'd much rather be taking blessing banners to get stronger within a run than taking resources that have little use to me. When you've fully upgraded everything, you can convert the resources you don't need and then buy reroll dice in the lobby to help control the RNG of your runs and ensure you get the blessings you want. But I don't think that's the best way to go about it. I think the game should detect when you've maxed everything and then start offering banners more often than resources within a run. As it stands right now, with the amount of blessings you do get in a run, I really think they should reconsider not having corruptions that block your blessings. Even if it's only in one room, I find them just very anti-fun and think that there are other better ways that they can make the game more difficult as the difficulties increase. The devs did put out a roadmap for Early Access Update 1 that looks pretty promising, including a minor update, a major update, and the promise of new systems later down the line, including a leaderboard system. They also have been pretty active since Early Access launch, pushing out 4 patches to adjust tunings on some things and fix bugs. Currently, Sworn is a really fun game with a great base for the devs to continue building on. While the game is currently a little light on content, I think there's still a lot of enjoyment to be had, and I can only imagine the game is more enjoyable in a full multiplayer setting. I really hope they get that matchmaking system up and running as soon as possible. I didn't mention it in the review at all, but I've seen Swarm compared to Hades a lot. I never mentioned it because I've never gotten the chance to play Hades. Personally, as they are both the same price, even without playing Hades, just on its own merits of the awards it's won, if you plan to play Sworn in a single player only and don't yet have Hades, you should just buy that. But if you've already played Hades, or you want to mess around with some friends in a good roguelike, I think Sworn is an excellent purchase. That's it for the video. I probably won't cover anything about this game for a while unless something super interesting happens. Let me know if you've played Sworn or if this game seems interesting to you at all. I've got some other content coming pretty soon. Goodbye.